It's really surprising to see so many people here tonight. I wonder what everyone came for. There's no prepared lecture here. And since there's so many people who may never have been to a talk like this, let me say that it is not a lecture that transmits information. About yourself, about myself. But it is a working together, a looking together in the course of this talk at what is going on within the human mind. One may never have thought that it is possible for oneself to observe what is going on in one's mind, to become aware of how one thinks and feels and acts and reacts. Because it has always been someone else who knows about this. One may study it in school, in university, or follow a spiritual teacher from whom one hopes to learn. But unless a human being becomes aware of what is actually going on within and outside from moment to moment, not according to what one remembers and has learned, but according to what is actually taking place, one will act from habit blindly. Without really seeing what one is doing to oneself and others. So in sitting here together and listening, can there be a freedom in this listening so that one will not only listen to words, but look whether one can see for oneself what these words are pointing at. If one has sat here for the last 50 minutes, or has sat at any time quietly for a moment, or stood quietly maybe while waiting for a bus or in a doctor's office, not immediately putting the printed word in front of one's face, but just sitting quietly. Isn't there an awareness that thoughts are constantly going through the mind? Fearful thoughts, pleasurable thoughts, threatening thoughts, planning thoughts, either about the past or about the future. If the thoughts are pleasurable, one will not mind it. But if the thoughts bring on physical fear and pain and agitation, one would like to escape from them, and we do. In all different ways of eating, drinking, taking drugs or drugging substances, entertainment, reading, throwing oneself into work, all of it to run away from fearful, painful or threatening thoughts. Not even knowing where they come from. Somebody in a recent retreat, which is a period of time in which one works and sits alone or together for any number of days in silence, in complete silence, except for talking in a meeting. In such a retreat, one person asked, "Where do my thoughts come from?" And it was not, to that person, was not an academic question. There was really a need to look at this directly, to find out where this endless stream of thoughts comes from. She said, something seems to hover above my head and enter. These thoughts seem to hover there, which in itself was a thought. So, could we here together try to see if we can find out, discover directly for ourselves where thoughts come from? If someone asked you, what did your mother look like, or what does your mother look like? What would go on in the mind if this question is asked? Can you describe to me what your mother looks like, is the question. And the person who's asked this question would bring up a memory, wouldn't one? One brings up a memory, or several memories, a whole series of memories, and then starts to report based on these memories, describing how one's mother looks like. If one had never seen one's mother, and there are people who have never seen their mother, maybe not even a photograph, would not be able to describe. There would be no memory and therefore no thoughts or words to describe. Similarly, if one was asked how much is 2 and 2, having grown up in a culture where this is imprinted on the mind at a very early age, the answer comes very quickly. The memory is there and the answer is there quickly. One has given that answer many, many times. The connections work very fast. If one asks this question of a little child who has never heard of that, or of a Stone Age person who has never been concerned about numbers or adding, there would be no memory and therefore no response. At best one would say, "I don't know." So some thoughts which have come repeatedly, innumerable times in our lives, come very fast. The memory and the response from the memory functions instantly. Some memories are half buried or totally buried. One may have to think for a long time, which really means there's something, some scanning process in the brain trying to dig up that memory so one can respond to a question. Sometimes one can't do that instantaneously, and the more one tries and looks for it, the less it's possible to come up with that thought. But so often if one relaxes and doesn't search for it anymore, then the answer will pop up. Because there's a memory for it. If there's no memory, there's no thought. Is it possible to see that? One is asked to describe one's hometown, one brings up the memory of it and describes, thinks about it, talks about it. If I were to ask people to describe my hometown and they've never been there or seen any pictures of it, would not be able to respond. There would be no thought about it unless one starts to imagine based on what one thinks this person's hometown may be like, and then brings up memories of similar places. Is this clear? That thinking comes from memory. That if there was no memory, there would be no thinking. One would see things which one would not be able to call by a name unless the first name was given and imprinted into memory. Let's listen for a moment. What happens in just listening to that? Is there just, or is the mind trying to come up with a word, or has already come up with it? It's water, or it's a sprinkler, a lawn sprinkler. The sound has triggered a memory. And the memory of the lawn sprinkler is very vivid in the mind. One may not have seen that one, but one has the image of a sprinkler in the mind. And at that moment, that this thought arises in the mind from the memory that is already there, does one still hear the sound clearly? Or is the memory in the way, the word? Sprinkler, is that in the way? Is it even possible to hear the sound without any word or memory? Because what's going on there is not in itself a word or a thought or a memory. It's what's going on. The sounds which are just made to imitate are not what's going on there. If one begins to think, I don't like that sound, or that's a lovely sound, it's so peaceful, so calming, tranquilizing, or whatever feeling and words this may evoke, doesn't one get further and further away from just listening to what's actually taking place. The personal reaction, the feelings, the likes and dislikes, the judgments of it. It's good for my meditation practice, or it distracts my meditation practice. All of this now becomes very important, very strident in the mind, and what's actually taking place recedes into the background or isn't heard at all. Is it possible to see personal reactions and put them aside and listen again without any word or reaction? Not really knowing what this is, because it's not the memory, it's not the word, it's not the reaction. What is it? If I don't know. There. Is there immediately the word car? The mind supplies it instantly, doesn't it? And then the word car may be associated with, isn't the traffic heavy tonight or isn't it light? I wish there wasn't this traffic so I wouldn't get so distracted by it. Reactions coming from one's past experiences and thoughts and feelings, and therefore blurring or blocking out what is actually going on this instant. Can it be heard without any judgment? Listen. Without really knowing what it is, because the words we give to it or the memories are not what is actually going on there. We don't know. We started out by saying that if one stops for a moment in what one is pursuing, becomes aware of this constant stream, endless stream of thoughts in the mind, what is it that almost all of our thoughts revolve around? Somehow or other, one sort of attends to it carefully. Isn't there always the I or the me, myself, connected somewhere to all the thoughts? What I'm going to do tomorrow or the next week or over the years or with my life, based on what? Maybe before going into that question, one should ask, what is this me, this feeling of me, that I am having these thoughts? Because this feeling is there, very deeply rooted in human beings. I am having these thoughts, not observing where they come from, but the conviction, the feeling solidly that there is a me that has these thoughts. Do you see that the me itself is a thought. A while ago we were observing that thoughts come from memories. What does your house look like? The memory, and then the description. That's where thoughts come from memories which have been imprinted in the mind all during our life, and the life of our parents and their parents and their parents. It's all come down to here. The thoughts that, or the memories that are deposited in the mind are young and old and age old. And from that thoughts proceed. And yet, in stopping and listening to thoughts, isn't there always the feeling that I have these thoughts, they're mine, I'm thinking them? And what is this I? This feeling of me and my thoughts? One can say, well, the I is a reality, there is such an entity inside me, call it soul or spiritual entity. But if one examines it critically, carefully, without any prejudice, one may find that this is itself a thought that has been deposited in the mind. It comes from memory of what one has been taught about oneself. That there is within each human being an entity like I or me, a soul. Something in this constant flux of impermanence, something which stays there permanently. If one doesn't want to question it, one doesn't have to. But if one wants to find out what is this I, this me, with which all of the thoughts seem to be linked up somehow or other. What happened to me yesterday? What happened to me years ago? What may happen to me in the future? What I would like to happen to me in the future, and what I'm afraid that may happen to me in the future? All the thoughts emanating from this me, which is what? If someone asked you, what are you? Who are you? How would one respond? I don't mean this as a tricky spiritual question, but a straightforward question being asked, what are you? Who are you? Tell me. What would one do? Wouldn't one first give one's name? One remembers it. It was given to one at the time of birth. One may state that one is a woman or a man. One may give one's age. One may give one's profession, one's training, where one was born, one's race, one's religion, one's nationality, maybe one's original nationality and then one's change of nationality. All of which, at this moment of talking about it, is idea and memory, isn't it? one was brought up from day one as a girl or boy, as a white or a black, as an American or a German, as a Jew or a Protestant. One's parents had dreams for one's education based on their ideas and memories. So one went to school, acquiring huge memories of learning. This is what one is. All that one has taught one is, what has been told to one, you are this, you are that, plus all the qualities that one told one possessed, being good or bad, skilled or unskilled, intelligent or stupid, talented, gifted, or not very talented, not as talented as the brother or the sister. The way parents, teachers reacted to one, it's all stored in one's memory. All the experiences one had as a little child, as a growing child, as an adult, it's all there in the memory. And this is what one feels one is. All the feelings that emanate from one's past experiences, feelings of what are all of one's feelings about oneself. Yesterday in the question period, we had many people sitting together and looking at a question that was posed, the person mentioning having felt guilty for many years over something that was done many years ago, and that memory still haunting one and producing guilt. So one is that too, feelings of guilt, feelings of fear that happen maybe so early in one's childhood one can't even remember. And yet the memory is not totally lost. It can function totally unawares and produce feelings of guilt or fear. And then all one's pleasurable memories in which the mind likes to dwell. All one's projections for the future. That's me, isn't it? That's what I am. All my past and all my aspirations for the future. What I look forward in the future and what I'm afraid will happen in the future. That's all me. It's this I. What I want for myself and my family. And where does it all come from? This feeling of this is me. Doesn't it all come from memories one has, or that are stored up in this brain and that issue thoughts and feelings constantly? One feels that oneself, this I, this me, is very different, very unique, and not like anybody else. Which is true enough. There's not two people who have had precisely the same experiences or precisely the same body, inheritance, physiology. There are not two people, supposedly, that are alike. And yet, we're all alike in that we're all unique in some sense. That is universally true of each human being. We share that. all having had somewhat different experiences, yet all of us having had experiences which have become deposited in the mind as memories and now issue thoughts. That is true for all human beings throughout this whole world, throughout this whole universe. All human beings having had past experiences and acting, thinking and acting from these past experiences. And thinking, each one, that he or she is unique in that. The thinking is not unique at all. We all think, the world over. No matter what kind of culture, civilization, all human beings think from past experiences. And all human beings from past experiences have past fears and pleasures that are projected into the future. Trying to get something, or trying to run away from something, escape from something. And in trying to get something for oneself, we're all alike. There are not two human beings who are different in that respect, trying to get something for oneself. Either oneself as a person or the group one is identified with, the family or the religious group one is identified with, or the political group, the national group. And all of this based on the thought of me, which issues from all the past experiences and memories that I've had. One wonders so often why it is so difficult to get along with each other, either in a small relationship in the family or countries getting along with each other. It almost seems impossible throughout the world. There is conflict and strife. And it may just be because each individual human being, either for himself or for his group, wants to get something or avoid something. And in that we're all in collision with each other. Because what I want for myself may be in collision with what you want for yourself. Both wants, both feelings of I based on thought. Do you see that? One can ask this question, wait a minute, is this all there is to me? Just ideas, past experiences, thoughts, images, things that have been imprinted into the mind, and action from these memories and imprints and conditionings? Is this all there is to me? If this question is vital, one has to observe how one acts and relates from moment to moment in one's daily life. When somebody says something nice to me, do I immediately feel good and flattered? Because the idea of myself is giving a boost, is given a boost. Or by the same token, if somebody says something nasty to me or about me, do I feel deflated or angry because the idea, the image of myself has been hurt? And then do I immediately remember this person who did this to me, either talking nicely to me or about me, or talking nasty about me or to me? Don't I immediately imprint, or isn't there immediately an imprint in memory about this person? So that the next time I see this person, I will remember what he did. The memory is there, and is there immediately an action from this memory? Either seeking the person out, wanting to be in his or her company, to be talked to nicely or talked about nicely, or avoiding this person because one was criticized, or trying to avenge the hurt. In other words, does the memory prevent really seeing this person as he is now, not as he was yesterday, but as he is now or she is now? Or is the memory so strong that it is impossible to see what's actually there? We did this before with the sound. There, maybe one had a glimpse of the fact that when there was no word, no reaction, no memory, then there's just the sound. One doesn't resist it, or hate it, or love it, then there's no division there. Then there's just what is. No one there to find fault with it or to cling to it. In meeting a person, the person one lives with, one's children, one's husband or wife, can there be this immediacy of meeting each other freshly? Or are all the memory images there which divide one from this person and oneself as one actually is this moment? This is so vital. Does one have this mental bookkeeping, this memory bank of what people are like, what they have done to one, which one has learned in the past through past experiences or through what other people have told one, and therefore totally unable to meet a real human being as he or she is this instant? If there's no image there, if the memory does not function to immediately produce a response, then two human beings can meet each other freshly, without any old grudges or revenge games going. But you can say this is impossible because the memory is there so quickly. But can one see that the memory is there quickly? How one immediately remembers what this person did to one and put it aside, just as one can put the word sprinkler aside and listen afresh. Put aside what somebody has done in the past and look and listen totally afresh. Just attend in an innocently new way. Maybe totally contrary to all these inner systems of reaction, which I have become habitual over the years. So can these habitual reactions, which are based on memory, come into awareness just as they are functioning at the instant? If they don't come into awareness, one will react from past memories as a separate I against or for another separate individual or group or entity, country. And our conflicts and divisions, feelings of isolation and need for defense will continue indefinitely. This chain of reaction and action and reaction has been going on since time immemorial. Reacting from blind memory without seeing what is actually there. Without seeing oneself as one is this moment, and the person right next to one as he or she is actually this moment, not as he was 2 minutes ago or 2 years ago. That's memory. That's not the real thing. And if I react from memory, we miss each other. If we both react from memory, we miss each other. They're just two memories communicating with each other, but not two real flesh and blood human beings. Throughout the world, one only has to turn the news on for a few minutes to see that human beings are reacting against each other as Russians, communists, capitalists, Americans, Chinese, Hindus, Muslims, Arabs and Jews. Reacting against each other in terms of images that have been deposited in the memory for centuries and generations, and therefore not seeing the real human being who is no different from oneself, also reacting from memory, imprinted in the mind since the day one was born by parents who were imprinted in their minds since the day they were born. And living in these memories and acting them out without actually seeing and listening what's there, apart from memory and thought. It's an entirely new world to be discovered. A world which is not imprinted with what one already knows about it from memory. You could say, it's impossible to live this way. Or you could say it's possible to live this way, but that's not the point. The point is can one become aware of how one lives from moment to moment? not judge it, because that's already memory. To judge a reaction, a habitual reaction, one must already have an idea that this is bad, right or wrong. But why not just observe what's going on with a mind that is free to observe, not tied to any ideas or beliefs, to whatever anybody has said, but to watch with an innate innocency, free from idea and memory. Is that possible? The next time one sees one's boss or person who works for one, or one's wife, husband or child, will one watch how does one meet each other? Is there already stuff there? And does this stuff prevent an immediate communication, an immediate communion? That's something to be discovered. And if it's not judged, what is the state of the mind that sees a habitual reaction and doesn't judge it? Isn't that free of all memory? Listen. Is the mind filled with what it wants to do, what it expects to understand, what it thinks it should be accomplishing? These are all thoughts imprinted into us since the day we were born. Can one see that? That the mind is never still? Always wants to describe, explain, excuse or accuse, dream, anticipate. Can that be seen without any judgment? Just listening to what's there, like one listens to that. Is there a feeling I should hear something, I must hear something, or I can't hear something? Or I have all these thoughts, I shouldn't have them? What's going through the mind without judging it? Just leaving it alone. With an openness that doesn't want anything. Can there be an openness that doesn't want anything? Or if wanting comes up, can it be seen without wanting to get rid of it? Wanting to get rid of wanting, just an openness, without knowing what the next moment will bring, but being there. with whatever there is, directly, freshly, not just from memory. We will end here for tonight.